Someone just started doing construction work as I pressed this button. But so be it. I'm gonna film now. These are all the books I read this month. It's 8 of them. Some small ones, some big ones. Let's talk about them. Also, I have a bit of a different background today. It's kind of boring to always have the same stuff, and I'm using a light now. I don't know if that is nice, but we changed the clocks. The dark season, the gloomy depression season has started, so we need to put on some lights and read some books to distract us from this horrible reality. So, the first book I finished this month is Eine, Liebe, Swanns by Marcel Proust, which is the second chapter of the first book of In Search of Lost Time. To be honest, I didn't love this. I should look up what I rated it, eh? I didn't hate it either. I was quite neutral. I did have to get used to the language a little bit. I gave it 3.5 stars. I was not as mind blown as I expected to be. Yeah, in a way, this guy chasing this woman and this hot love that they have that soon changes, that is probably relatable to almost anyone, eh? And I realized not in the books I finished, but recently I've been reading a lot of romance, which I never thought I would say, but stay tuned for that. That's probably going to be in the next month's reading recap. So yeah, this was a nice preparation to read In Search of Lost Time, but I think I'll let a bit of time pass because I don't really want to skip it. Like, if I read the whole In Search of Lost Time, then I would like to read this again. So I don't really want to read it like immediately afterwards. Right? So, next up, we got Verwirrung der Gefühle. Translates to like confusion of emotions or something, and it's by Stefan Zweig, and it's a bunch of short stories about people who have conflicting emotions. The first story was probably my favorite. The story that gives the title is the only one that I don't remember anything about. Well, we have a story about a Russian soldier who gets like stranded on the shore of a lake in Switzerland, and he doesn't really know where he is. He doesn't know if it's still it's set in the wartime, I should say that. He's just completely confused, and he wants to go back to Russia, and he can't. And then in the end, spoiler, he just goes back in the lake and drowns. Then we have the Invisible Collection, which had a very, very nice premise. It was a story. It was also set in the wartime, and there was a like famous art collector who went blind, but he still like cherished his art collection. But what he doesn't know is that his family long ago sold everything, and it's just white pieces of paper. And he like looks at them every day, and he holds them, and he's just staring at blank papers, which is very tragic and a very nice story. And then my favorite story was the first one, which was about a boy who befriended like a young royal dude, like a dandy kind of guy. But that dude just wants to fuck his mom. And I'm sorry for saying it like that, but that's basically the story. And then he gets like super angry and hateful about that guy because he feels like he was used by him. And he's right, but he goes a bit over the top. But yeah, that was my favorite story. The ending was very nice. Stefan Zweig does not get the attention that he deserves, which I think is mainly because he never had like a hit novel. He just mainly wrote like novellas and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to look into, well, he was not German, but if you want to look into German literature that was written in German, then you should probably look into this. I gave this 3.75 stars. Next up is my favorite book of the month, which is Hundejahre by Günter, which is the third part of what he calls a trilogy. 3 books which are loosely collected. 3 books which are loosely connected by all being set in the town of Danzig, which used to be part of Germany and now belongs to Poland. Close to the Baltic Sea, and it's the Tin Drum is actually the first part of that, and this is the third one. And it's not really a trilogy because some of his other books also are set in that same world. They share some of the characters. The protagonists from the other books make like short appearances, but not really. They're not even characters, they just get mentioned. But there's one character called Tulla, which appears in all of his books, set in different times, sometimes as a child, sometimes as an adult, sometimes as a young woman, which is very lovely and very, very cool to read. And it didn't really follow a plot, this novel. It just kind of went through the lives of a bunch of people. One of them being a guy called Walter Matern, which is, I guess, the novel follows him the most. In the first part, him and his friend, who they later get estranged, the guy changes his name. He gets beat up by a Nazi squad, which also his friend is a part of, even though he just briefly joined the Nazis for he was an anti-fascist and he got in trouble for it, so he joined the party to get out of trouble. But then he beats up his best friend because he's of Jewish descent, and then his friend changes his name and quite literally comes a completely different character. I've rarely seen a character change that much, and they become estranged. And then in the second part, it focuses on completely different characters. And well, I could sit here for ages describing everything, but this is very, very nice. If you have read The Tin Drum, and if you loved The Tin Drum, then you're gonna love this too. If you have not read anything by Günter Grass, I don't think you should start with this one. But if you're a fan of him already, you should read this. It's worth it. It's more than 700 pages, I think, in some editions, but it's worth it. It's a lovely, lovely novel. Then next up, this has the Iliad and the Odyssey, but the Iliad I read a couple of months ago, and now I read the Odyssey, which I'm counting as 2 separate books. Feels weird to give a rating to it. I rated it just 3 stars because I think this translation is very old. It's close to 200 years old, I think. Maybe that's not true. Maybe more like 150. It doesn't say here how old exactly it is, but it's very old. And I had a hard time understanding it. And yeah, should probably read a retelling. I mean, you know the basic plot of the Odyssey. Everybody kind of knows it, I guess, but it's just something that I checked off my bucket list now. So I officially have read Homer. Next up, we got this little guy, which has 2 novellas by Heinrich von Kleist, which also is the beginning of the 18th century. So I didn't realize I read so much old stuff this month. The Marquise von O, which I didn't really like that much, and Das Erdbeben von Chili, which, damn, that was a lot more brutal and a lot more graphic than I thought it was gonna be. But that one I quite liked. I gave it 3 stars. These nice reclam editions, they're nice if you just want to, if you just feel like knocking out a book in a day, then this is very nice. Next up, I realized I didn't give like a ton of good ratings this month. It was still a good reading month, but this book I found upsetting in more than one way. First of all, the title, The Samurai, is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit because there's a character called the Samurai, but like he barely does anything throughout the whole story. And with this title, I kind of expected, and with this, I expected some, like some war scenes, some fighting scenes, something like that. There's not a single fight happening in that whole book. It's the main character is a missionary, so I think the book should be called The Missionary, right? Then you kind of know what you expect. But this author Shusaku Endo, he was a Christian Japanese writer from the beginning of the 20th century. Have not heard of him before, but what puzzles me is that he, as a Christian author, portrays Christianity in such a terrible, terrible light. Like, he definitely did not convert anyone. Like, all of the suffering, it's all the missionaries' fault, basically. Like, I'm gonna spoil this for you because I don't recommend that you read. Well, you can read it if you want to, but spoiler, in the ending, everybody's dead. Everybody dies. And for almost all of them, it's the missionary's fault because he's just super selfish. It's not really about the religion. It's more about like the diplomacy, the diplomatic reasons. He just wants to like become like a high-ranking bishop or something, and he kind of forces everybody to come along with them, and they travel and they travel and they travel throughout the whole world. And no one fucking gives a shit about them, and no one really wants them, and no one welcomes them, and everybody has a terrible time. And then most of them die, and then they go back to Japan, and they expect to be, like, greeted as heroes, but they get treated as kind of a nuisance, and then they all get arrested and sentenced to death because they confessed to Christianity, which the missionary throughout the whole book like pressures and bullies them into doing, which is just terrible. And then he doesn't even fucking take any responsibility. Then he's just like, oh yeah, God will forgive me. And I was like, these people would be happy and with their families and alive if you didn't fucking put them through all that shit. And then he's just like, oh yeah, I'm dying like a martyr. And I'm like, no, you fucking didn't do any good for anyone. So yeah, the very upsetting. There's one called Deep River that I originally was interested in reading, and I couldn't get it. That's why I got this one. I don't know. Maybe it's worth reading. And I am gonna keep this because I don't know. It's one of those books. Maybe in 10 years I'm gonna think differently about it. But man, this is exactly like the kind of like. This is exactly what people mean if they say they don't like Christianity, like this complete blindness to everything that's not Christianity, not people taking people seriously, pressure. And it's not even about the belief, it's just about money and diplomacy and relations and stuff. So I think I rambled about this enough now. So let's put it down before I get too heated and excited. Nietzsche. Also sprach Zarathustra. Thus spoke Zarathustra. I don't know, maybe I'm not smart enough or not well read enough. Maybe. I didn't really get this. I think I kind of got the concept, but none of this did anything for me. Like, none of this made me feel anything. I just like stubbornly like read through it, but it was there was one paragraph that did make me feel something because it was so incredibly sexist, where he was like, well, women don't know how to have friendships, they're not like far enough evolved yet, and I'm like, what the fuck? But I didn't want to put the book down, so I just kept pushing, and it looks nice, it has a nice, matte kind of cover, but is this guy full of shit? I don't know. Maybe I should read more by him and see if I kind of get like a bigger picture of something or anything. I don't know. I was gonna use this as like a starting point to get into philosophy, but this kind of makes me want to put it down. So I still give it 3 stars, but well, and the last book, also not like the biggest hit, was The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson, which I'm sure almost everybody has heard of in some way, because this was like super duper everywhere like 1 or 2 years ago. And it won, no, it didn't win, it was a finalist in like some book award, and it has like a ton of praise. And this, I don't know, what I didn't get, and what I think is the main criticism of this book, is that these 2 stories that this book tells are not connected in any fucking way at all. It's talking about the Chicago Fair, which in the foreword the author claims was like one of the biggest events in American history and changed the world forever. And I also didn't get how, no one remembers it today, and they built like the first Ferris wheel, but I don't think that really changed the world in a profound way. I didn't really get the big impact, the events there, that I was promised by Erik Larson. And I did like the story kind of the devil, I guess. It's like the serial killer who just goes around killing like a ton of people, and like this fair that they're building, which was like the biggest fair. It might still be, it's probably not heaven with like Disneyland and stuff, but at that point was like one of the biggest events, the most attendance in history. But yeah, and then there was the serial killer going around just like, like using people, making people dependent on him like a true psychopath. It's crazy that we don't remember this guy more. Holmes is his name. I forgot his first name, see? I don't even remember him. Well, I can't find it now. But man, this story I found very intriguing. It was a bit more fictionalized, I guess, because some of these events you cannot possibly know. But yeah, that I found quite kind of interesting, but all in all, it didn't really do much for me either, this book. 3.5 stars. So, with exception for these 2, I didn't really have any books that I liked very much. But that's okay, That's I kind of like that sometimes, to like have something that I'm not crazy about, but I'm still like pushing through and still reading it, and that kind of shapes my opinion of other books, and I kind of refine my taste, you know what I mean? So I don't think it was a bad month at all. I just wasn't as lucky with the choice of books. I will show you briefly what I'm reading right now. I'm reading a non-fiction book about the Panama Canal, which I haven't read enough of to really have an opinion about it. I know it's gonna take me ages to read. I'm planning probably like 4 months or something, maybe even longer, because there's no margins, basically tiny writing and a lot of pages and a ton of information, but I don't know, still interesting, just not in any rush to finish it. Then I'm reading A Certain Slant of Light by Laura Whitcomb, which I am enjoying a lot. I'm gonna talk about it in depth when I finished it, obviously. But yeah, this cover is very nice. I like the title immediately, and it's a very nice premise. It's about a ghost who just kind of talks about what it's like being a ghost. It sounds stupid, but it's a nice book. And then we have Kairos by Jenny Eppenbeck, which is a very, very strong 5-star contender. I finished about half of it, and you can see that by my markings that this is I think this is gonna be a classic in a couple of years. So yeah, let's go in depth next month. And thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, and see you soon.